Hello, and welcome to this month's drawing tutorial. This month I want to do a different approach with you. I'm going to show you how to quickly and accurately depict a little girl, and we're going to work quickly and in a different medium than usual. So I'm going to use charcoal pencils, and it's called Nero lead pencils. They look like this. So we're going to combine those Nero leads, charcoals, and some carbon pencils. And the reason I want to work dark is because I want to show you how you can draw a portrait, make it accurate, but not rely on a lot of erasing. These dark leads are going to be really difficult to erase. So I'm going to start with a charcoal pencil. It's very blunt, and I'm going to sketch down the shape of that head first of all. See how I give myself some guidelines for the top and some guidelines for the bottom, and then I just fill in the sides. A little light guideline for the eyes, just as usual, light guideline for the nose, as usual, and just roughly where I want those features to wind up on the face. So bottom of the lips, bottom of the nose, these are the eyes. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for the spaces between the features in proportion to the face. So you notice I started by giving myself a guideline for the bottom lip. I'm taking that from the distance between the chin to the bottom lip that I see here. Then I'm trying to estimate that same distance on my portrait. Once I'm sure that those placements are all accurate, then I'll start to build the features within those guidelines. And here's her headband. Her hair is a large shape, so I want that down on the page right from the beginning as well. Alright, if those guidelines are correct, then I should start to be able to roughly place my features within those guidelines, and by the time I'm done roughly placing them, they should look fairly accurate already. I'll also rough in the irises on the eyes, and then I can go in and I can start to use the tip of the pencil and straighten up my lines a little bit more. Before I darken up too much, I can erase those guidelines, and I can erase the sides of the face and redraw them more accurately. But I'm still staying in the basic boundaries that I developed before because they were pretty accurate. The top of the ear lines up with the top of the eyebrow. Her top of the eyebrow would be about here at the bottom of the bangs. So I'm using those things all together as I go through now, and I place things a little bit more carefully. So this is fairly accurate, and I'm going to erase some of the lines just because I don't want too much emphasis on lines at all, especially in places where the face is being struck by light, like this nostril. It's hardly visible. So I don't want all of the lines to have equal billing on the face, as it were. So I'm going to strengthen up now the stronger lines, and I can switch to my Nero stick and start to add some tone. That puts things down really nice and quickly. And as I work, I'm looking for the shapes of shadows, and I'm looking for those highlights as well because I want to avoid the highlights. And I'm also going to go into the face at this early stage and start to find the shadow shapes on the face. Put them down in large shapes. I will indicate where the pupils go and the highlights on the eyes, and then you can use a chamois cloth or your finger or a tissue, and you can blend this first pass. I will use a piece of paper towel, wrap it over my finger, and just blend these shadow shapes. And then when it comes to other skin tone, I'm still blending over the top, but I'm just lightening up my pressure. So the skin tone has something, it's not just paper white, but the shadows are much darker. Then I'm going to go in with my eraser and pick clean areas that might have gotten too much tone in them, like the eyes, the whites of the eyes, and highlights on the tip of the nose. And I'll pick out a few small highlights in the hair just to keep them preserved as we go through. And then we can go back into it. These carbon pencils come in hardnesses just like charcoal pencils. So I'm going to choose a softer one. This is a 6B, and I'm going to accent the darkest places. The darkest place on the face is always the pupil. It's just pure black. So you can fill that in. Just make sure that you're sure of the placement and the size and everything before you do this, because you can't erase it. And then you can add some tone to the iris. That's the colored part of the eye. And I fill that tone in with little scribbles like this, because if you examine your own eye in the mirror, you'll see that in the iris there are lots of little spokes of different colors. And remember that the eyeball is a ball, so it's retreating in both corners, and you need a little bit of shadow there. The lower lid is lighter, but you should be able to see the upper and lower part of the skin as well. When those are done, go in with a blending tool and blend those small shapes, everything but the highlight of the eye. Then I'll add a little bit of tone underneath some of the other features, like the bottom side of the nose should have a little bit more tone on it. The nostrils are very dark, and add some tone to the lips. I'll switch to a charcoal pencil to make that even darker. Add a little bit more tone to the sides, bottom of the bangs, top of the bangs, avoiding that highlight. And then I'll go in with my stomp, the larger stomp now. This is a size 4. Use circle strokes and just blend out everywhere that I've added tone. Let's darken up those eyebrows too, though. And circle stroke, constantly referring to the photograph to make sure that you're getting the tones the right shade of gray. So you don't want to have really dark darks where you don't see dark darks on the photograph, and similarly you don't want highlights where there shouldn't be highlights. The way that the light plays on the face is how the viewer knows what the face looks like, how steep the features are, how harsh the lighting conditions are, the shape of the nose, and so on. So it's really important that you match those tones up really well. And don't be afraid of contrasts. Make these highlights on the nose a little bit smaller, but I'm going to strengthen this little divot by the nostrils so that you can see that this isn't all on one plane. The nose dips down and then rises again to form the nostril. And it's a really good illustration of what I was just talking about with getting your tones right. If this is all the same shade of gray, then you're going to lose the idea that the nose has bump, bump, bump. Here, this is a really subtle shadow beneath the eye, and I'm just going to put it right in from the beginning with my used stomp. So for subtle shadows, you don't have to go back to the pencil. It's really interesting, isn't it? How quickly you can put together a likeness even without a graph. If you just concentrate on those large shapes and you get them right, everything else falls into place really easily. Now, what I really like to do when I'm working with charcoal and really dark mediums, like we have been in this tutorial, is I like to keep some of the areas a little bit less finished, because I think it creates a interesting finished drawing look. So what I'm talking about is I'll probably add a little bit more detail in the hair here and there, and some flyaway hairs like what I see in the photograph. Maybe a little bit more shadow on the top of the hair. It looks like this needs to be extended up a little bit. But then see, I might just darken a portion of this and sort of leave the rest alone. Having a contrast of finished areas and unfinished areas can be really interesting in the drawings. So sometimes I don't finish everything to the same level, and it looks more like a drawing, and it has a certain charm that way. So you can do that too if you care to. Just add a few last areas of shadow here. And let's add some pattern to this headband so it doesn't look like it was completely neglected. I'll smooth the top of the shadow here. bit of shading, oh, here and there, like this. I like the way her hair looks messy, so I'm going to emphasize that by making some of those flyaway hairs with my pencil and some more with the blending tool. I'll add a little bit of shadow to the sides of the headband so that they retreat with the shape of her head. Now, if you want, you can go back and sharpen up a few lines with that kneaded eraser a second time. Pull out a few highlights in the hair, and that can add something. But it really does depend on how finished you want it to be. And this is finished enough to be a good portrait. Voila! So that completes this month's drawing tutorial. I hope that you take the time to draw this. I'm going to download the reference for you so that you can do it at your own studio. And it will strengthen your ability to see the large shapes if you work in this style. Don't be afraid to do a lot of the actual drawing with your stamp or tortillon. For this drawing, I had a blending tool that was a number 2 and one that was a number 4. So for the smaller areas, like the eyes, I used the smaller blending tool, and then for this side of the nose and other places like that, I went to the larger one. And of course, don't forget that that initial blending pass was done with a piece of paper towel wrapped around my finger. So that's all you need to get started. I'm going to leave you to it now. I thank you for watching, and I hope that you join me next month for another drawing tutorial.